Well, excuse me. We're headed for the landing strip here in Acts chapter 28. We're ready for verse 30. For 2 whole years, Paul stayed there in Rome in his own rented house and welcomed all who came to see him. 2 years, he had to rent his own house. It seems, I'm thinking about, okay, if he was this dangerous criminal, it's hard for me to kind of connect the dots that he would have needed to rent a house and just be there. He wasn't in prison, only a prisoner. Worked out well for him in some regards. Now, earlier we read that there was a guard assigned to him. When right, this was what we read right before he invited the Jewish leaders come in, had this dialogue with him. Some accepted his word and his teaching about Jesus from the law and the prophets. Others refused to. Anyway, 2 years. Okay, think about what could happen in 2 years when a guy like Paul was at what was the center of the known world in Rome. I don't know. I'm sure there are some religious traditions about a site where Paul was, where the house was that he rented. Honestly, this was in AD about 60. How would we know? I mean, really? And and here's the other part. There's nothing sacred about the location. But wherever it was, a few things we've got to think about here. I have a feeling when you look at Paul and the patterns and basic habits of his life, he was not very helter skelter. He was quite strategic. I have to think the house that he rented would have been in a strategic location. Purely a guess, purely conjecture. I do know what we see of him up to this point. That house became a center of, we would call it evangelism. I think it also would be legitimate to call it a center of relationship building, dialogue, teaching, preaching. People came and went. He was not restricted, which is in itself, I wouldn't call it a miracle or anything, but it is at least a point of interest. If as a prisoner, well, any other prisoner that people come and go however they want to. Now, maybe there are people that are, wearing the ankle bracelet and they have been restricted to house arrest but the authorities care about who sees a prisoner. Well, apparently that was not the case for Paul. And in those 2 years, we have kind of an indication that he wrote what we have as 1 Timothy and Titus. In 2 years, he was not traveling. Now, this is not the only time that he paused for 24 months for 2 years. He had done that before. In Ephesus, he'd stayed a couple of years. So this was not like a total break with his pattern. But it was, Is it too much for me to say this is part of God's plan for him? And I think, again, this is just my feeble opinion, but I think God intended for him to hang out there in Rome for 2 years because it was the center of influence in the entire known world. And Paul had these 2 years to infect the influencers in Rome, the curious, but even more than just the curious, those who were sincerely seeking what they saw and heard from Paul as truth. 2 years. What seemed maybe to some on the outside, I think to some of Paul's friends, they would have thought, oh man, Paul, I'm so sorry you're stuck. And it's been 2 whole years. I think Paul would have been saying, it's been 2 years and feels great to have been able to connect with these people that I would never have been connected with at any other time in any other way. Paul was a guy who seized opportunity. I mean, he even wrote it. It's in Galatians or Ephesians where he wrote, make the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Meaning, you can whine about how evil the days are, or you can account for that and make the most of every opportunity. And I think that's what he was doing in Rome. Now let's think about this in our lives. I don't want to burn your time up telling my story, but I will tell you this. For the last 3 years, we've been in Edmond, Oklahoma. It's a fine town. It's a very nice place to live. And we have 2 dear friends here. In that period of time, I had hoped to build my private counseling practice. And I never got really more than about halfway to my goal of seeing 20 clients a week, which honestly, in the counseling world, that's borderline part-time, even at 20. Well, for 3 years, we've been working at it. And when I wasn't in my counseling sessions, it felt like I was kind of in a holding pattern. It was nothing like Paul's imprisonment, except that I was here, which we're still here until about a week from Friday, as I'm recording this, and then my son-in-law from Las Vegas is going to drive the truck and drag a car, and we'll follow behind, make our way to Las Vegas to move back there, which I think is going to offer us greater opportunity in pretty much every way. I don't hate Edmond. I don't resent the fact that we've been here for 3 years. I'm disappointed that I have not very much to show for it. On the other hand, I think I was a good steward of the opportunity that God gave me to have positive input, helpful input, and in some cases even healing input into people's lives. On that level, I felt very useful. And yet, it felt like I'm kind of stuck. Do you ever feel that way? Have you ever had a season in your life where I mean, not in a complaining way, but as you look at the season, you realize, uh, seems like the pause button has been pushed. There's a season, or for many of us, more than one season in life where that's going to happen. Here's my challenge. In that season, make the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. I believe that wherever I am, my best option is to be faithful, useful, stewarding every opportunity that I encounter. I have to look for opportunity and I have to go for it. That's part of the stewardship of it. There's no accusation or judgment in this. Just make an observation of your life. Are you stewarding your life well? Now, there are legitimate constraints in each one of our lives. It might be health, it could be income, it could be just the nature of the place where we find ourselves. Okay, within that, we have this, well, it's a responsibility, but it's also this privilege to make the most of every opportunity, to steward opportunity. See, one side of this is not the responsibility side. This is the privilege side. God trusts you and me with opportunity. See, opportunity doesn't happen randomly or by chance. I've never been more convinced than I am today, and I'll probably be more convinced tomorrow than I am today, that there is no such thing as random chance. Either God allowed it or He caused it. But the opportunities that I can seize and steward come my way because God trusts me. Maybe it's weird for me to say, but God trusted Paul with the opportunities, hundreds, maybe thousands of opportunities to be his witness, to steward these opportunities that could, and these particular opportunities could only come to him in Rome. I'm learning how to have a less negative view of myself and try to treat myself and think of myself more and more as I think God views me. So don't take this as disparaging against me, but realistically, I don't think God's going to plop me down on Capitol Hill and turn me loose. But He has plopped me down for 3 years in Edmond, Oklahoma, and turned me loose. And I am grateful that I really do believe, I look back and think I stewarded the opportunity pretty well, not perfectly. Were there opportunities that I could have seized? Could I have done more? Well, of course. There's only one person that could look back on his life and legitimately say, I couldn't have done more, and that was Jesus. I'm not him. Neither are you. But let's do ourselves a favor. Let's steward wisely and faithfully every opportunity that God brings into our lives. Well, okay. I'll see you next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.